The wind blew fiercely across the dusty main street of Willow Creek, swirling sand across worn wooden porches and rattling loose shutters like ghosts whispering old stories. The town was small, forgotten by time, and the winter arriving early May. Everything feels sharper, colder, not just in temperature but in spirit. People walked with bowed heads and tired faces, focused only on surviving another day. And among them, walking slowly with trembling legs, was a woman named Elena Grant, holding the hands of her two small children, Lily, age 6, and Noah, age 4. Their clothes were thin, their cheeks pale, and their eyes carried a hunger no child should ever have. Elena wasn't always like this once. She had a warm home, a husband who promised forever, and a life full of laughter. But forever had ended the day he walked out, leaving her alone with children and debts. The world didn't crumble loudly. It fell quietly, piece by piece, until all she had left was a small velvet ring box. Inside it was the engagement ring once given with love but now held with desperation. She stood in the middle of the town marketplace, her voice almost too small to be heard. "Please, someone, buy my ring. My children are hungry." People looked, some with pity, some with discomfort, others with annoyance. A ring meant nothing when survival was uncertain. Lily tugged her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mama, it hurts," meaning the empty ache in her stomach. Elena swallowed hard, tears burning behind her eyes, knowing she had no food left, no job left, and no hope left. But she forced herself to stand straighter, not for herself, but for the tiny hands she held. As she tried to call out again, a shadow fell over her, a large shadow. Slowly she turned, and her breath caught. Behind her stood a man, so tall and broad he looked carved from mountains. His hat shielded part of his face, his boots were dusty, and his presence made the crowd step aside without a word. Everyone knew him. Luke Maddox, the richest rancher for miles, a giant not just in size, but in reputation. Some said he was ruthless, some said he was silent as a storm, others said he was impossible to approach. No one dared bother him, and now he stood staring at her. Elena trembled not from fear but from shame. A woman begging was judged harsher than a man stealing. Before she could speak, Lily stepped forward and lifted her small hand, and with a shaking voice she whispered, "Mister, do you have food?" Luke's eyes lowered to her, and something shifted inside him, something no one had seen for years. Without speaking, he reached inside his coat. Elena quickly stepped between him and the children, terrified. "Please, I'm not asking for charity," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I only want you to buy the ring, please." Her hand opened, revealing the delicate gold band. Luke didn't take the ring. Instead, he looked at her with eyes deep and unreadable. Then slowly he knelt, something shocking, because a man like him didn't kneel for anything or anyone. He removed his glove, placed a warm, steady hand under Lily's chin, and asked softly, "When was the last time you ate?" Lily hesitated, then answered, "Yesterday morning. Mama gave us her food." Elena shut her eyes, unable to stop the tears this time. The crowd grew silent. No sound but the wind and the quiet sobs of her children. Without another word, Luke stood up, took out his wallet, and to the shop. Of everyone, including Elena, he handed her a thick stack of cash, more than enough to feed them for months. Elena froze, her lips parted. "Sir, I can't take this. Please, I just needed someone to buy the ring." Luke finally spoke, his voice low, strong, and impossible to forget. "I'm not buying your ring." He then pressed the money gently into her trembling hands. "I'm buying your life back." The world seemed to stop. Even the wind paused. Elena stared at him in disbelief, her knees weakening. Before she collapsed, Luke caught her gently, lifting her like she weighed nothing. "Bring the children," he instructed the stunned bystanders, and without waiting, he carried her toward his horse and wagon. Nobody dared question him, because Luke Maddox never helped anyone. He avoided the world, lived like a lone wolf, and never let people close. Not since the tragedy no one spoke about, but everyone remembered. But at that moment he didn't care about the past or the rumors. All he saw was a starving mother and two scared children, and something inside him refused to walk away. Maybe because once, long ago, someone had walked away from him too. As he settled Elena carefully in the wagon, she whispered weakly, Why would you help us?" Luke looked down at her, eyes steady like the mountains surrounding. "The rancher answered, because no one helped when I needed it." He turned to the children, wrapped them in a warm blanket, and said softly, "You're safe now." Then he guided the wagon forward toward the Maddox Ranch. The place people said no one entered unless they were hired, invited, or meant to stay. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and crimson, and as the wagon rolled across the open land, Elena's grip tightened around her children. She didn't know what future waited ahead, but for the first time in a long time she felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. And deep inside her heart, a quiet voice whispered maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning. The wagon rolled through the open plain. As the cold air softened, warmed by the glow of the setting sun, Elena sat quietly, her children leaning against her, wrapped in the thick wool blanket Luke had given them. Her shaking hands still clutched the money, a lifeline she never expected. Every jolt of the wagon reminded her this was real, not a dream. She risked a glance at Luke sitting beside her, guiding the horses with steady confidence. The man seemed carved from silent, strong, guarded, unreadable. Didn't look at her, yet somehow she felt seen in a way no one had seen her in years. Inside her heart, fear and gratitude twisted together. She didn't know him. She didn't know why he had helped. And what frightened her most was the part of her that wanted to trust him. After years of hardship, trust felt dangerous. The horses slowed as the massive gates of the Maddox Ranch came into view. Elena's breath caught. The ranch was enormous, endless land stretching toward the mountain, cattle grazing lazily, and barns larger than most town buildings. Workers paused as the wagon approached, their expressions turning to shock the moment they saw Luke wasn't alone. Whispers began, but no one stepped forward. Luke didn't acknowledge the stares. He simply guided the wagon toward the large ranch house, a towering structure built of timber and stone, sturdy and timeless. As the wagon stopped, the front door opened and an older woman stepped out. Her gray hair was tied neatly, her posture strict, but her eyes warm. This was Martha Harlow, the Maddox housekeeper for nearly 30 years, one of the few who could speak to Luke without fear. She froze when she saw Elena and the children. Luke dismounted and lifted Noah first, then Lily, then finally helped Elena down. She tried to stand, but her legs wobbled, and Luke instinctively steadied her with a gentle hand at her back. His touch was warm, strong, and made her heart race in a way she didn't understand. Martha approached, confusion and curiosity written on her face. "Luke," she said carefully, "who are they?" For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Luke looked at the children, then at Elena, and finally answered with calm certainty, "They're staying here." Martha blinked. "For how long?" Luke didn't hesitate. "As long as they need." Elena gasped softly. She hadn't expected that. She thought he'd give her food, maybe shelter for one night, but this? She stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "No, I can't stay. You've already done too much. I just need a little time to find work. Then we'll go." Luke turned to her, his voice quiet but firm. "Your children need warmth, rest, and food, and you're barely standing." His gaze softened, so subtle she almost missed it. "You don't have to prove you can suffer alone." Elena felt tears return, not from sorrow, but from the painful shock of kindness. For years she had fought, scraped, begged, and survived, always believing she had no worth beyond endurance. And now this stranger was telling her she deserved rest. Martha noticed the exhaustion in Elena's eyes and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come inside, dear. You and the little ones need a meal and a bed." Elena nodded weakly, letting Martha guide the children toward the warm glow of the house. Before following, she looked back at Luke. "Why me?" she whispered. Luke met her gaze steady, unshakable. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago." She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded and followed her children inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around her like a memory of safety she thought she had lost forever. As Martha prepared food, Lily and Noah sat at the table, eyes wide as steaming bowls of soup were placed before them. They ate quickly, too quickly, like children who had learned food could disappear. Tears burned in Elena's eyes as she watched them eat, guilt and relief crashing together. Martha gently touched her hand. "They'll be okay now. You will too." Upstairs, Luke stood alone on the balcony, watching the sky fade into deep blue. He wasn't a man who believed in coincidences. He wasn't a man who opened doors, not anymore. But the moment he had seen Elena standing in that street with her fragile dignity and starving children, something old and buried inside him had risen, something he thought he had lost forever, the instinct to protect. The ranch wind blew cold, but inside the house behind him, for the first time in years, the Maddox home wasn't silent. There were small footsteps, soft laughter, life. Luke closed his eyes and whispered a thought that felt dangerously close to hope. Maybe this time I won't fail. Nightfall wrapped the ranch in quiet stillness, yet inside the Maddox home, warmth flickered from the fireplace, washing the room in a soft orange glow. Elena sat on a cushioned chair near the fire, her children asleep on either side of her. Their faces, normally tight with fear, hunger, and uncertainty, rested peacefully for the first time in months. Watching them, she felt her heart ache with relief and disbelief. She had forgotten what peace looked like, forgotten what safety felt like. Every breath still carried the instinct to run, to protect, to survive. But here, in this home that was not hers, surrounded by kindness she never asked for, that instinct softened. She brushed a curl from Lily's forehead and kissed Noah's cheek, her tears falling silently. Martha appeared with a folded set of clothes, soft blankets, and a gentle smile. There's a bedroom ready for you 3. Clean beds, warm water if you'd like a bath. You're safe here. Those last 3 words broke something inside Elena. Safe. A word she had not heard or believed in far too long. She nodded with trembling gratitude, unable to speak. As Martha walked away, Elena gathered herself, lifting Noah into her arms. Lily stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. Together, they followed Martha upstairs to a cozy room with quilts, wooden walls, and the scent of cedar and lavender. The children climbed into the bed eagerly, sinking into softness like they were being held by a cloud. Elena watched them for a long moment before brushing their cheeks with a mother's devotion and whispering, "Sleep, my loves. You're okay now." Once they settled, she stepped outside onto the hallway, letting the quiet surround her. Grief, relief, and confusion. She felt both saved and uncertain, like someone pulled from drowning but unsure how to breathe again. She walked downstairs and found Luke standing near the fireplace, his large frame outlined by flickering light. He wasn't drinking, talking, or pacing. He simply stood as if guarding something unseen. Elena hesitated before speaking. "The children are asleep," she whispered. Luke nodded slowly without turning his head. Silence stretched thick and uneasy, until she took a deep breath and said the words sitting heavy on her heart. "I don't know how to thank you. People don't help strangers like this. Not anymore." Luke finally turned toward her. His eyes were serious but not cold, just guarded. "You don't owe me anything," he replied quietly. "I didn't help you for payment." She lowered her gaze. "Then why?" His jaw tensed slightly, and for a moment she saw a flash of vulnerability beneath the strong exterior. "Because once," he said, voice low and rough, "I needed help too. And no one came." His words hung in the air, like a truth pulled from scars rather than memory. Elena swallowed hard. She recognized pain when she heard it, because she carried her own. She softly replied, "I'm sorry. Whatever happened, I'm sorry you went through it alone." Luke didn't respond. His silence wasn't rude, it was protective, like someone who had built walls so high even he sometimes forgot what lived behind them. After a moment, she turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Elena." She froze, surprised he knew her name. She hadn't told him. He placed his hat on the table and said quietly, "You and your children will stay here. You'll eat, you'll rest. And when you're strong enough, we'll talk about what comes next." Her breath caught. The way he said it, calm, steady, felt like a promise. Not ownership, not pity, just responsibility. Something rare, something real. She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Luke inclined his head, once simple, firm, final. Elena made her way upstairs, the weight in her chest lighter than it had been in years. When she reached the bedroom and slipped under the quilt beside her children, they instinctively curled against her. Her eyes closed, and for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep without fear. Downstairs, Luke remained by the fire. The house was no longer silent, no longer cold, no longer empty, and though he didn't fully understand why fate had placed that woman and her children in his path, a quiet certainty settled in his chest. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't coincidence. This was the beginning of something he never expected, something that might just save them all. The fire crackled softly, and the night wrapped around the ranch like a promise. New beginnings were coming. Morning sunlight spilled across the Maddox ranch, turning the golden fields into a sea of shimmering light as the sound of cattle, wind, and distant horses blended into a peaceful chorus. Elena woke slowly, her eyes blinking open to warmth, softness, and silence, not the familiar chaos of fear, hunger, or uncertainty. For a moment she didn't remember where she was, and panic flickered in her chest, but then she saw Lily curled against her and Noah breathing softly beside her, cheeks full and peaceful instead of hollow with hunger. A wave of gratitude and disbelief washed over her, and her throat tightened with emotion. Carefully, she got out of bed, letting the children continue sleeping while she walked toward the small window. The ranch stretched endlessly, framed by mountains and skies so vast it made her feel both small and safe. As she stared out, she saw Luke Maddox already outside, working with his men. His horse moved beneath him with powerful grace, and he guided cattle with calm authority. Workers spoke to him with respect, not fear, but caution lingered too, like they knew a fire lived beneath his calm exterior. Elena watched him longer than she meant to, her heart unexpectedly drawn to the quiet strength he carried. She wasn't looking for a savior. She didn't want to depend on anyone, but something about him made her feel seen, not as a burden, but as someone worthy of help. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. Martha stepped inside with folded laundry and a warm smile. "Good morning, dear. Breakfast is ready downstairs when you're ready." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. I don't want to trouble you." Martha laughed gently. "Trouble? Honey, this house hasn't had laughter or footsteps in years. You're a blessing, not trouble." Those words melted the last bit of resistance inside her. After washing and changing into clean clothes, Martha had given her clothes that actually fit and didn't make her feel like a ghost. She woke the children. Their eyes lit up at the sight of soft bread, eggs, jam, and warm milk waiting at the table. Noah ate with both hands, jam smeared on his cheeks, while Lily giggled at his messy attempts. Elena watched them with tears she didn't bother hiding. For months, she had watched them pretend they weren't hungry to protect her. Now she watched them simply be children. When breakfast was finished, Lily ventured outside, drawn to the horses grazing near the fence. Elena followed, nervous but curious. That's when she noticed Luke riding toward them. The closer he rode, the more intimidating he looked, tall, stern, powerful. But when he approached Lily, everything softened. He dismounted slowly, removing his gloves. "You like horses?" he asked gently. Lily nodded, eyes wide. "They're beautiful." Luke crouched beside her, pointing to his mare. "Her name's Star. Want to pet her?" Lily's face lit like sunshine breaking clouds. She reached out, trembling with excitement, as Star lowered her head patiently. Noah hurried over, and soon both children were giggling as the horse sniffed their hair and nudged their hands. Elena stood nearby, her chest aching with gratitude and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. Luke eventually turned to her. "You sleep well?" She nodded. "Yes. Better than I have in a long time." He held her gaze for a moment, too long, not intrusive, not demanding, just present. Then he said, "There's work here if you want it." Her breath caught. "Work? House help? Bookkeeping? Helping Martha? Whatever suits your skills. You'll be paid fair." Her heart raced. This meant stability, a future, a chance to rebuild her life with dignity, not charity. She lowered her eyes, whispering, "Thank you. I want the job." Luke nodded once, like he already expected that answer. "Good." Then, after a pause, he added something that surprised her. "You don't owe me anything. This isn't a bargain. It's a beginning." His words sank deep into her soul, rewriting a story she thought was already finished. For weeks that followed, the Maddox Ranch changed, not loudly, not suddenly, but gently. Elena worked in the house, helping with chores and organizing old ranch ledgers. The children learned to feed chickens, brush horses, and run freely without fear. And Luke, he watched quietly, protectively. He never crossed boundaries, never asked for praise. But whenever the wind blew cold, he made sure there were blankets. Whenever the pantry grew low, it was restocked before sunrise. Whenever fear flickered across Elena's face, usually when memory returned, his voice steadied her like solid ground. One evening, as the sky turned purple and gold, Elena stood outside watching the children chase fireflies. Luke walked up beside her, silent at first. The wind carried the smell of pine and earth, wrapping around them like a memory waiting to be spoken. Finally, Elena whispered, "Why do you keep helping us?" He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as if deciding whether to speak. Then softly he answered, "Because no one should feel forgotten." She turned to him, and for the first time he didn't look away. In his eyes she saw something unexpected, not loneliness, Not guarded distance, but longing. A longing for something he thought life had taken from him forever. And without speaking another word, both of them understood. Something unspoken was beginning slowly, carefully, undeniably. Not love, not yet, but the first heartbeat of it. Days turned into weeks, and the Maddox Ranch slowly transformed from a quiet, echoing space into a home filled with laughter, tiny footsteps, and a warmth Luke hadn't felt in years. Elena worked with quiet grace, never complaining, always giving just a little more than asked, whether she was organizing books in the old study, tending to the garden, or helping the children learn small chores around the ranch. The workers, once distant and cautious around her, began to look forward to her presence and the soft kindness she carried. She didn't try to impress anyone, yet somehow she did. And Luke, though he didn't show it, noticed everything. He noticed the way she tucked Noah's hair behind his ear as he slept. He noticed how she carried herself with dignity even after years of hardship. He noticed her gentle strength, the kind that survived storms without bitterness. One afternoon, while Elena hung freshly washed clothes on the line, sudden loud noise echoed across the ranch, metal clanging, a horse panicking and shouting. Noah sprinted toward the commotion out of curiosity, and before Elena could react, the ranch stallion, an unpredictable beast named Titan, kicked violently, sending dirt flying. Noah froze, too shocked to run. Elena's heart fell into her stomach. Noah. She screamed, sprinting, but she knew she would never reach him in time. Then, like a flash of raw power, Luke appeared, grabbing Noah and pulling him out of danger just as Titan bucked again. Dust filled the air. Silence followed. Elena collapsed to her knees, arms shaking. Noah clung to Luke's shirt, crying from fear, not pain. Luke knelt, checking him carefully, voice steady and soothing. "You're all right, just scared. Nothing hurt." Noah shook his head, still crying but unharmed. Elena rushed forward, pulling Noah into her embrace, sobbing quietly into his hair. "Baby, don't ever run near the stalls. Don't ever scare me like that." Luke stood slowly, his jaw set in a hard line as he addressed the workers handling Titan. His voice was low and terrifyingly calm. "Secure him. No child gets near that horse again." The men nodded immediately, wasting no time. Later that evening, when the children were asleep and the house wrapped in quiet, Elena stepped onto the porch where Luke stood, overlooking the dark horizon. The stars glittered overhead, the moon casting silver light across his shoulder, making him look like part of the landscape, solid, unmoving, ancient. She hesitated before whispering, "Thank you for saving him." Luke didn't turn. A child shouldn't have to fear the world. His tone was heavy, not cold, but carrying history. Elena stepped closer, her voice trembling with emotion. When their father left, Noah stopped speaking for weeks. Lily pretended to be brave, but she cried in her sleep every night. "I tried to protect them. I try everything. But the world, it isn't kind." Luke finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something break open, not anger, not pain, but recognition. "No," he agreed softly, "it isn't." The night air held them in stillness, two souls shaped by different wounds but walking the same road. After a long silence, Luke said something that surprised even himself. "Don't blame yourself for surviving." The words hit her like a truth she had never allowed herself to believe. Her breath shuddered as tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from release. "I don't know how," she whispered. Luke stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough she could feel his presence like a shield. "Then learn." Here, her lips parted, a quiet question trembling at the edge of hope. "With you." His eyes softened barely, but beautifully. "If you'll have this place." He paused, voice roughening as more than shelter. Her heart pounded, fast and frightened, not because he scared her, but because she felt something she never expected to feel again. Safety, trust, the beginnings of love. Before she could speak, a soft sound interrupted the smallest sound, Lily's sleepy voice. "Mama, I had a bad dream." Elena immediately turned, kneeling to hold the trembling girl. As she comforted her, Luke watched quietly, and in that moment he realized something undeniable. The house no longer felt like his, it felt fuller, warmer, more alive. And somewhere deep in his guarded heart, a shift began. He didn't just want to protect them. He wanted them to stay, really stay, not as guests, not as temporary charity, but as something he had never imagined would be possible again. Family. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt less like survival and more like living, something Alina had forgotten how to do. The children grew stronger, their cheeks full and rosy, their laughter echoing across the barn and fields like music the ranch hadn't heard in years. Alina found comfort in routine cooking, helping Martha, brushing horses, reading with Lily, teaching Noah letters in the evenings by the warm glow of lantern light. And slowly, without realizing it, she began to heal. The shadows under her eyes faded, her shoulders relaxed, and the fear that once lived in every breath began to loosen its grip. Luke watched the transformation quietly, never rushing, never demanding, just watching, protecting, and slowly allowing warmth back into his own guarded heart. One evening, when the sun dipped behind the mountains and turned the sky into streaks of fire and gold, Luke approached Alina while she stood at the fence, watching the children skip stones near the creek. Something in his expression told her this conversation would be different, important. He didn't speak right away. He simply stood beside her, letting the silence hold them. Finally, he said softly, "The ranch hasn't felt like home in a long time." Alina's breath caught, her heart thudding painfully, unsure where his words were leading. Luke continued, his voice rough like gravel and truth. "Years ago, I lost someone." She didn't interrupt. She let him unravel memories he had buried deep. She was the woman I thought I'd build a life with, a family. His jaw tightened. But she didn't love the ranch life, didn't love the work, and when things got hard, she left. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside him for years. After that, I told myself I didn't need anyone, didn't want anyone. Then he turned to her, and this time, there was no wall between them. "But watching you, watching your children, watching this home become alive again," he paused, searching for words strong enough to carry the weight of everything he couldn't say. "It made me realize loneliness wasn't strength. It was a cage." Alina's eyes burned with tears. She didn't want to blink away. She whispered, "Luke, I don't know what you expect from me. I'm broken. I've been abandoned. I've been humiliated. I'm still afraid." Luke took a small step closer, not overpowering, not demanding, just enough that she could feel the steady safety of him. "Being afraid doesn't mean you're weak. It means you survived." His voice softened, deep and sincere. "And I'm not asking for promises or answers. I'm asking if you'll stay, not because you need a roof, but because you want a life here, with me, with them." Her heart trembled. Hope warred with fear. But when she looked past him and saw Noah and Lily laughing freely without hunger, without fear, without pain, she knew the answer wasn't complicated at all. It was simple. It was meant. She swallowed, tears escaping down her cheeks as she whispered the words that changed everything. "Yes, I'll stay." Luke exhaled as if he had been holding his breath for years, and for the first time since she met him, she saw a real smile, not small, not guarded, but full and honest. The moment felt sacred, gentle, and powerful. The children noticed and ran toward them, wrapping their arms around both. Adults with innocent certainty, as if their hearts already knew they belonged there. Luke placed a hand over Noah's small back and the other over Lily's, his protective embrace now extending without hesitation. Alina met his eyes, and in that gaze she saw everything she once believed. She would never have safety, love, belonging, and a future. The wind brushed past them, carrying the scent of earth, pine, and new beginnings. And as the sun set behind the vast open land, the truth settled softly across the Maddox Ranch. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a second chance, a family, a home. And finally, after years of pain, fear, and sacrifice, Alina whispered into the fading light, not out of desperation, but pure gratitude. "Thank God you stopped for me."